Okay, so next up we have Patty Ralrick from here at the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Palaeontology, presenting her talk, Plastic Milk Crates and Livestock Watering Troughs, a quick and expensive microvertebrate screening complex.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a volunteer here at the Tyrrell Museum, considered a volunteer research associate. I specialize in technical editing and microvertebrate studies. So today I want to talk to you about a project that we started last summer to try and get a quick and dirty, basically, washing complex set up here that's fast and easy to use, basically using plastic milk crates and livestock watering troughs. Which one is it? Wasn't that one.
Like the top.
No.
There we go. Okay, so why did we set this up? Here at Tyrrell, we have the Encana Badlands Science Camp, and basically it's a 6-week camp project where children come and immerse themselves in paleontology. So they stay in the teepees out in the beautiful Badlands here in the Drumheller Valley. We have 3 categories of participants. We have the junior campers who are aged 9 to 12, the senior campers who are 13 to 16, and then we have a family camp where a family member comes and can stay with their children ages 5 and up. And they, like I said, they are immersed in paleontology. So they prospect, they do dinosaur-themed projects, cast painting, and things like that. Unfortunately, since the program only lasts like 6 days, they don't have time to do anything such as preparing bones. And quite honestly, I don't know if we want 9-year-olds preparing bones anyway. So we tried to figure out a way that they could get a more hands-on experience while they're here and could learn how research actually works from beginning to end. So we decided that they should help with microvertebrate washing and screening and sorting, because that way they could actually see that there is more to fossil assemblages than just the big giant dinosaurs. Well, we got to looking at the wash bay that we have, which is in the big lab. I'm sure you all saw it during your tours. And you can see that it's actually quite cramped in there. Here's Becky adding some material to one of the old bins that we had, and there was no way we could get 36 children in here at one time. And plus, the old screen boxes are made of wood, are quite heavy, getting old, and they're starting to splinter, so they were a little bit kind of dangerous for children to use. And actually, Chris Capobianco will speak to you later this afternoon about the new types of screen boxes that we're using they're pretty nice. They're the Cadillac of the screen boxes, where mine are the Kias of screen boxes. So after going into the indoor wash bay and deciding that it's just too cramped, we decided to move it outside. We do an outdoor wash bay. That way we don't have to worry about making a huge mess in the museum. The kids could get dirty and play in the water and have a great time. And we decided that outside the small lab, we had the perfect area. It's virtually flat, relatively unused, and we could see it from the small lab so we can keep an eye on it. So the first thing we did was we had some concrete blocks laying around that weren't being used that we set up out back. And these are good for placing the troughs on, and you have a solid area to work so you don't get all muddy, because there is a lot of water involved. And it keeps the troughs level. So then we decided to do a little research into what would work best, and we decided that livestock watering troughs were good. These were purchased at a local agriculture store. They were about $130 a piece, Canadian. And there's very little preparation that you have to do to use them. We ended up drilling holes along the upper lips, which I'll explain later, and we put numbers on them so we could keep them separated in case we decided to do wash numerous localities at once. The plastic milk crates are just your basic milk crates that you see in the grocery store every day, and are injected plastic, and they're very sturdy, very easily accessible, and they were about $12 a piece. They're especially handy because as you can see up here, they're perforated with holes, including hand holes, and yet the bottom part, the bottom 6 inches, is solid, so you're not going to lose any of your sediment. So we placed the screen in the bottom, and we used the 32 gauge mesh because the site we were working is fish rich, and we wanted to be able to catch all of the teeny tiny little fish vertebrae. So we placed it in, and then we screwed it down, and I would suggest using stainless steel screws so they don't rust, which is something we're going to do with the new ones that we create. And then place the aluminum stripping in to hold the screen in place so it wouldn't pull off. Screwed those in, and then put silicone on the edges so that the fossils couldn't get in and get trapped. And as you can see, after a bit of use, the silicone does start to peel away, but it's just it's a very easy process to take that off and re-silicone it. It takes 24 hours to cure. Also, I would suggest that you break off the bottoms of the screws because they are quite sharp. And as I found out the hard way, sometimes you're grabbing the boxes and not watching what you're doing, you get scratched. So to avoid injury, take the bottoms of your screws off. But the plastic milk crates are also very convenient because the bottom is made up of this lattice work of plastic, which supports the screen, so the screen doesn't pull away or sag if you put too much matrix in it. So it was ideal for that. Plus, they're also lightweight, so the kids had a great time throwing them around. So to support them in the troughs, we just simply slid milled pieces of wood through the handles, and there you go. It's ready to go. You just have to fill it up with water and put your sediment in, and off you go. So for the project, Dr. Mike Newbury allowed the science camp kids to come out to his Maastrichtian age Pisces Point locality out in Dry Island, Buffalo Jump, and he showed them different collecting techniques. He allowed them to prospect around, and then at the end of the day they collected a multitude of matrix and brought it back to the museum, which we started washing, and they really had a ball doing this. I mean, what 9-year-old kid wouldn't have fun getting dirty and living in teepees and doing paleo all day? So we let them put the sediment in, and they would come back a couple of times a day and swish it around because the matrix there is bentonite rich, and bentonite is a clay that absorbs five times its volume in water. So it has a tendency to swell up over the material inside. So if you don't swirl it around regularly, it actually will not disconsolidate. It will just turn into this big crust, and it's kind of nasty. So the kids had a ball doing that. But since this was the test summer for this, the kids actually didn't get to sort the material from the Pisces Point locality. We just didn't have time to get everything completed. So we let them sort material from another locality. And before anyone gets alarmed that we're letting kids sort material, the idea that I have is that we'll sieve the material into different size classes, and anything that remains in a number 10 sieve, we'll let them sort through. We'll keep the clean concentrate, and then we'll have a trained technician sort that later, so we're not missing any material. And yet the children have a lot of fun finding the fossils. You know, they get the thrill of seeing what it's like to be the first person to ever hold a fossil. So since they were here only for 6 days each, Mike Newberry and I continued with the process to get the material washed because, as I'm sure every museum out there has, we had a big backlog of material that needed to be washed and sorted. So for drawing, we just used old bread racks that were screened inside, and since we had only made 24 screen boxes, so we didn't have enough to have one set washing and one set drying at the same time, we would just wash the cleaned material into one of these bread trays and then just leave it outside, and it's warm enough here in the valley that it would be dry in a few hours, and then we would just bag it. So for cleaning, it's very easy to clean the troughs. Really the first thing you have to do is, well, I guess if you're going to clean it, but when you're going down and you're swirling the material around, you really need to get all of the detritus out. Lots of leaves blow in. And what really surprised me was the number of insects that would end up in there. It's almost like a pond environment. So I would get bees and big spiders and kind of scary things in the water that I'd have to scoop out, and ladybugs. It really attracted the ladybugs. One day there were 15 I had to take out of the troughs, which I found just amazing. I'm not sure why they were so attracted to it. So they're really easy to clean. Once you get the screen boxes out, you just basically tip the troughs over. You find somebody like Mike Newberry here with a strong back, and you have them tip them over. And you see, as you see, all the water just washes right out, and most of the sediment comes out. And what is left inside, all you have to do really is tip it over. But one of the things we noticed was that this lip on the inside here doesn't actually connect with the outer edge of the trough. So it's possible for sediment to get caught up inside this hollow rim. And that's why we drilled the holes. And so you can see that the sediment and the water is actually coming out of the holes. So then you just tip it over even further, use a hose to spray it out. You can see where the sediment is coming out there, and you clean it. It's so simple. Of course, if you're changing localities, you want the inside of your trough to be extremely clean, but when you're doing the same locality, it's not that big deal if there's a little bit of scummy stuff left inside. And this is very fine-grained material. I always thought we should try and market it as like ladies' facial mud pack because it'd be perfect. Get a Cretaceous facial. But nobody's going for it. So with every project, there are pros and cons. I fully believe that the pros outweigh the cons for this. The materials are easily accessible. It takes maybe 10 minutes to create the screen boxes. They should last forever. If you take care of them, you can just rescreen them occasionally. The cons mainly were the wooden supports were splitting and cracking. But I think if we started using treated wood or varnished the wood, that wouldn't happen any longer. The outdoor use does increase the potential for vandalism or theft. However, last summer, I would be in a small lab, and I watched numerous people drive by in the back who had gotten lost or walk by, and not one of them stopped to look at it. I was really surprised. You'd think people would go over and be like, what is this? But I guess they just weren't curious enough. The evaporation rate is rather high when you're working outside, so you do have to refill the troughs quite regularly to keep the water level up, because the crates do sit, the milk crates do sit rather high in the water column, which has advantages because that way you can let them disconsolidate for quite a long time before you have to clean the troughs. However, you have to keep the water level up so that it will continue to disconsolidate. And something we did notice was that the disconsolidation ceases below 4 Celsius, which we were working last November outside, and that water gets quite cold, so you'd be actually quite happy to stop working when it gets that cold. And something that we did notice that was quite interesting was that with the sun, with the days when we had really warm sun and a little bit of wind, there was actually a convective current that was occurring within the troughs. So we didn't actually have to go down and swirl the material around as much by hand it kind of did it itself. And this is something that Mike and I are going to try and quantify this summer. It was really quite interesting to see that happen. And Mike asked me to talk to you guys about a spreadsheet that I put together. Damn it, Mike. During, while I'm sorting, I'm lucky I have a computer sitting right next to me while I sort and identify material. So as I do it, I just put a field number basically with it, identify what the material is, or who it is, and what it is, whether or not it's complete or partial, and then you can just add to it. So like for this multi-tuberculate, I actually asked Dr. Craig Scott, who's our mammologist here, or curator of mammalogy, to identify it, and he identified it as Mesodma. So then we share the file, and whenever Mike wanted to know what the levels were, how many, what the diversity, what the abundance were, he could just go in and look at the spreadsheet and see the numbers that were accumulating. And he could say, oh, so do we have any Cyclurus dermopalatines? Yes, we do. We have 3 broken ones. Yay. So instead of coming and going through each and every little tiny vial and trying to decide what's there, it's very quick for him to go in and look at it. So during the sorting, found lots of excellent material, beautifully preserved fossils. We started with about 2,400 kilograms of sediment that was collected between the science camp participants, and all the hours that I worked was about 290 hours, and we resulted in 8,200 individually identified fossil specimens that either have been or are going to be accessioned very soon. So I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Newbury for getting me involved in this project. Morgan Sievertson is the head camp counselor for the science camps, and Darren and Becky and many others helped me with this project. Thank you very much.